sir. You're about to see something really special.
Really thought this part of my life was behind me. Frenzy disappeared with the drinking 3 years ago. Why now? This makes no sense, and I'm right on the verge of freaking out.
Back from your life.
These people can be animals.
What you burn.
Thingy's out.
Some bitter things you should never.
Good cheese.
Learn. Wallow through the days.
Remember, cosplay's not consent.
So here's to me. Congratulations, me. Yay, me.
This would all be so much easier if I was hammered. Hammered. Right.
You can take away the anger, but you leave behind the pain. It's your soul I will.
New ventures are always scary. Blah, blah, blah. Something positive and uplifting.
But the hurt will still remain. In your soul I'll live forever. Till I'm melted in.
Don't miss our new film, The Love Song of William H. Shaw, coming soon to a streaming service near you. Hey everyone, this is Clif from Talking Pondo. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up about spoilers on the show. We do talk about the films in a certain amount of detail, so you may want to watch the film first and then come back if you're not a fan of spoilers. Also, every now and then there's a little bit of adult language, so we wanted to give you fair warning on that. We hope you enjoy the episode, and we really appreciate you listening.
Welcome to Making Pondo and Talking Pondo. Talking Pondo is a podcast where we pick out 2 movies each week and talk about them in detail. Making Pondo is a podcast where we talk to people we've made films with and we discuss all their experiences on set.
And we're back. All right, Marty, here we go.
Number 9,
Number 9.
we are
Number nine?
standing still. This
Number
is
9.
the 9th episode of Talking
Pondo.
I
That's
always
right.
have to think about it for a second. I'm
Which
like, which one is this? Talking or making? It's still so fresh in my head that it's like, okay, talking's where we talk about movies. Making's where we made a movie. Okay, that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And of course, it probably makes no sense to the people listening to go, what do you mean episode 9? You're episode 11 or 12 due to the makings that are in there. But that's kind of how we're doing it. So, you know.
Of this particular format, it's the
yeah.
9th where we talk about movies.
Exactly. You get 3 talking pondos, you get 1 making pondo.
Mhm.
You get 3 talking pondos, you get 1 making pondo.
Exactly. And so that's why this week we have a movie from the 30s and a movie from the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Both comedies. Both, in my opinion, kind of classics.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave you Grosse Pointe Blank,
Yes, the
and you gave me Animal Crackers.
Animal Crackers, our first film from the 30s, 1930
Mm-hmm.
to be exact.
Yep. You want to start with Animal Crackers? Or you want to start with Grosse Pointe?
Let's start with Animal Crackers.
Okay. All right. So, you know, growing up as a kid in the Midwest, right? The people who are old enough to understand what a UHF station will know what I'm talking about. But basically, back in the day when the only TV that you could get was on an antenna, there were the VHF stations, which was, you know, NBC, ABC, CBS, OETA, your PBS station. And then you would switch over to the UHF band, which was local broadcast of whatever, carrying whatever, kind of like what I guess the WB and the CW and the Paramount all kind of morphed into. But I watched these as a kid. These were in rotation with like Francis the Talking Mule, the Three Stooges, the Bonzo movies, anything that was kind of a slapstick comedy or weirdly animal comedy related, was in rotation on those stations. So I remember watching these as a kid and really enjoying them. That was my first thought when it started was like, oh, yeah, I remember these. Sure. Overall, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It's kind of like When Harry Met Sally. It's got really good, fast repartee and dialogue. The dialogue's witty and funny. You know, Groucho's entrance in that movie it's probably one of the greatest entrances of character of any movie I've ever seen. You know, he's literally being carried in that strange, cradle thing, being carried by those, African guys or whatever, because I can't remember. They look like, I guess, like Maasai warriors or I don't know, whatever, but they're carrying him down the stairs and he's just kind of like, he looks like a fully grown baby with a cigar in his mouth, I guess. And am I wrong? But Captain Spaulding, hasn't that name appeared a lot in other movies and as a character or as a character name?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I could swear it has.
And most notably in the Devil's Rejects,
there you go,
Rob Zombie movies, where
there you go,
that whole Firefly clan, a lot of them are named after the various names of Groucho characters throughout the years.
Ah, okay, right.
He always wanted to make a Groucho biopic, but people are like, "You're Rob Zombie. We're not going to give you the money to do that." But he's like, "I'm really into this, though. I'm not just the horror guy.
I didn't know that.
I get into this too." So.
Yeah, well, if he's going to do to Groucho what he did to the Munsters, maybe it's for the best.
The Munsters probably not coming soon to this show. Because then I would have to watch it again. That's the problem.
Yeah. I loved the. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I'd always known about these movies, but I didn't really have access to them until maybe about 7 or 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I finally got to watch the 12 Marx Brothers movies, and I kind of instantly took to them as like, oh wow, this is where the wellspring, this is where it all comes from everybody else. Like you're seeing not only figuring out how movies are made, but like this, laying it all out, how you do comedy and whatnot.
Well, the movie's relentless. I mean, it starts, it takes 20 minutes to get to the plot. It takes 20 minutes to get to the plot about the two young lovers and the switching out the painting and all that stuff, which is really what the main thread that's you're kind of following as all the hijinks just kind of revolve around it, right?
It's just an excuse for
all the hijinks, exactly. But it takes 20 minutes to get there because they're just going off for 20 minutes. I mean, the entrances alone take forever. There's a song and dance in the middle of it. That whole bit about, they keep singing when he's trying to talk and give his speech, and then he starts singing as he gives his speech is, brilliant. I love the Art Deco sets on the thing. Like the 30s Art Deco, that movement's really beautiful. And it made me wish the movies were in color. Cause I would I bet you that's really brown and gold and black. I bet you that's gorgeous. Like, because the sets were pretty nicely decorated. I mean, it wasn't just, it's a vaudeville. It's all vaudeville come to this big screen, but they didn't just put a bunch of scrims up and a bunch of backgrounds and just leave it and have the actors do their thing in front of it. They actually, went in, did some sets, really made things nice. And I get it. I'm not saying that the 30s were archaic and they did that with all their movies. Obviously you've got DeMille and others doing stuff at that time and they're making big movies at that time. But for a cheap little comedy with the Marx Brothers, I was impressed that they really kind of went all the way out with it. And there was some really pretty furniture and some really pretty stuff. And there was like, it'd be nice to see this in color. It'd be really nice to see this in color.
Especially a movie from 1930. So we're still in very early talkies. This movie was made in New York. They hadn't even gone out to Hollywood to start making film yet. That's why I didn't start you on the Coconuts from 29.
Well, was it? So were they set? Do you know if they were sets or were they just filming in an actual house or an actual?
No, I think these are all
mansions.
A set that was built, like it's just a nice soundstage somewhere, if I'm right. But they were still performing this play in the daytime, so they had this thing this sharp as a tack by the time they laid it down on film, basically.
Mhm.
Then they started writing stuff for the screen with the next movie. But as I was mentioning before, I didn't want to start you with the previous movie, The Coconuts, which is also a stage play, but they hadn't figured out how to do sound as good yet, and
Right.
camera movement was like almost non-existent in that one. But with Animal Crackers, you're starting to see the beginning of a little bit of camera coverage, or let's move things around a little bit. I mean, you're still basically a filmed stage
Yeah,
play.
it's
You kind
still
of
basically a
want
film
those
stage.
big
There was a
wonders.
little bit of camera movement, but
Yeah.
like I remember one of the first shots is a push in. One of the early moving shots is a push in on the actor, but the camera, whatever dolly, is so archaic that the camera's just bouncing
Mhm.
as it moves in. And I'm just like, oh yeah, that's probably why they didn't move them as much back then, because it was,
Yeah.
it kind of ruined the image.
Mhm.
The acting is very stage acting.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
no one's in character, except for maybe the Marx Brothers, because they're playing those Marx Brothers characters, but everybody plays to the camera. I can't remember the woman's name. The one, she with him in Night of the Opera too?
Oh, yeah. Margaret DeMille.
Yeah. Margaret DeMille, yeah. She has a really bad habit of looking at the camera, doing a joke and then looking at the camera and moving past it. And it's just like, wow, that you couldn't get away with that nowadays. But that's,
Right.
again, that shooting that vaudeville play or that,
Yeah.
thing on that stage play in front of a camera.
You become that audience in the play because they would be looking at you if you were in the crowd, right? And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know how
Well,
to make a movie yet, so
and that's the fourth wall break, right? That's why
Yeah.
there's so many of them in the movie, is because they're literally playing to the audience, right?
Mhm.
And they're great. I mean, I love them. I love all the fourth wall breaks, but it just, one of the things that occurred to me is like, movies, especially comedies, are so different now.
Oh yeah.
Like, this is still really funny. I mean, it's still funny. The writing's sharp. The jokes are, I mean, there's always something firing. It's relentless. If somebody's not telling a joke, somebody's doing a physical gag. If somebody's not doing a physical gag, then they're singing, and that singing has some sort of comedy to it, or they're playing a musical instrument and there's a gag within that too.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the only time I think there wasn't a gag and there was just music was during the harp playing by Harpo.
Oh yeah, when they just kind of stop everything for a minute. And he does
they
his
just
harp.
stop everything for a minute, and he's just like, "Oh, by the way, I can rock on the harp. Here you go." That was really cool. But at the same time, it was like, I think it's the only thing that wasn't sort of geared towards being a gag or being funny.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
That whole variety
Mhm.
vaudeville stage show act will give you a little bit of everything.
Yeah. One of my notes says it's bit after bit all tied together in a love story.
Mm-hmm.
It's just here's an excuse for us to do bit after bit after bit after bit, and nothing wrong with that. It's just wow.
Yeah, it's a filmed play, and so by the time they get to their next movie, which I think is that's Monkey Business. It's actually like, oh, this is a movie now. So the characters are not doing the fourth wall breaks; they're actually just interacting with each other, and it's like, oh,
Right.
okay. So then filmmaking starts to come in, but this is like this weird time capsule of, oh, so this is what it was like before they started filming stuff.
One of my notes says Harpo is an HR nightmare.
Oh yeah.
Just sexually harassing the women and fucking with the men everywhere that he goes. Like, he just, like, if he's not slapping an ass or trying to get some girl, grabbing on some girl, then he's, pissing some dude off by doing something weird and wild. It's, I loved Harpo as a kid. I just thought his facial expressions are great.
Yeah.
He has this vacant stare, this clown's vacant madman stare that's just fantastic. It's really great. One of my other notes said it was both ballsy and brilliant to do a scene in the dark. I think there was a scene in the dark that lasted about 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's just dialogue. It's just dark and it's just dialogue. And I imagine if you're doing the play, why you're doing it, probably to move things around or to change the set.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was brilliant. It worked really well. It worked really well. It's very, very funny. Very, very funny.
Yeah. Harpo just randomly shooting at people and.
Oh, that was great.
And then, like, the statue comes to life and shoots back at him. And so you're already seeing weird shit like this years before Airplane or anything. Wow.
Yeah, there's a bit of surrealist comedy to it, you know, where it's sort of it doesn't make any sense at times, but it's hilarious. Right? Like, why would those statues be alive? Why would one of them have, and if they were, why would one of them have a gun?
Yeah. And
you know?
How would an audience in 1930 react to that? They've never seen a bit like that before, and so then they're getting a really weird one. That probably fucking killed. Because nobody had seen that one yet. It's like the very first, you know, your shoes untied, you know.
Yeah. Zeppo didn't have much to do with the movie. I mean, he's really not. He's the straight man.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have much to do in it, though.
Yeah. You know? That's why, you know, he does a few more movies with them, then kind of retires from it.
Yeah. He doesn't sing. He doesn't dance. He's sort of, like, I imagine in the vaudeville, he was the straight man, the announcer, the kind of guy who would stand to the side and sort of organize and, hey, look over here for a minute while everything's being, changed. And he'd, have a part in the whole thing. But, I don't know. I could see, it's weird how when they get to the movies, they're like, oh, we just do that through dialogue and exposition. We don't really need you.
Yeah. Their first 5 movies with Paramount, this being the second one, are viewed as being what's the word? Anarchic? I feel like I'm mispronouncing. You might want to edit to make me sound better. Haha. There's a lot of anarchy in the film,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anarchic. Oh yeah. Anarchistic tendencies.
Yeah.
It's
just so wild.
If you're listening, just tell us what you think. Yeah. Now I have to Google it.
When you get up to their movies with, I think it's Warner Brothers, when they start Light at the Opera, then the movies become a lot longer and there's more of the story. We got to have the story and we got to hit the 4 quadrants kind of thing, where it's got to be more of this and more of that. And so on some hand, there's funnier bits, more precise, more concise, but there's more bloated of the other type of story because they're trying to appeal to just everybody, but not realizing the Marx Brothers are why we're watching the Marx Brothers movie. Nobody's putting that on going, I'm going to watch the romantic subplot. No, we want to see.
Right. Yeah. You want to see shit. Right? Yeah. You want to see Groucho and Chico and Harpo go nuts. Yeah. Yeah. They all break the fourth wall in that movie, by the way. At one point, all 4 of them look at the audience and break the fourth wall. And when I was a kid, the only movie I'd seen ever do that was Ferris Bueller. And I thought it was just so brilliant. And then I found out Woody does it in Annie Hall. And then, of course, the Marx Brothers do it. And I think it's kind of and then, of course, we do it in one of our movies.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things in film. It's kind of weird to kind of just look at the audience for a minute and go, it's fucking here. It's a weird, fun thing to do anyway.
So we went back to that tried and true technique. And, I viewed Bradford as all those different things as speaking of Bradford and our movie Love Song of William H. Shaw, soon to be available, if not already by the time you're hearing this.
Also in Revenge of Zoe. Yeah.
I viewed him as being kind of the Ferris, but also at the same time, I always kind of pictured like the Groucho doing the fourth wall breaks and animal crackers, the strange creatures, weird creatures,
Yeah.
Remind me of that, where he's like, these people can be animals, or he turns and, it just gives me those vibes.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah. I am thinking, that Chico bit where he keeps playing the same bit over and over
Oh
again.
yeah.
He's
If you
rolling
get
his-
near a song, play it was one of my
Yeah.
notes. Yeah.
Yeah, if you get near a
MSP
song, play
references
it.
these things a lot. So
That's great. That's so good. He's
I
doing
think I
that.
went past it. Maybe if I go around to it.
Yeah, if I may come back around to it. I can't figure out the ending. I don't have an ending for it.
Once happened to me
But
for like
it's-
3 days. Or
It's that thing where he's doing that finger roll and that gun at the end.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Pink,
Mhm.
tink, and it's so Bugs Bunny. It's so Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
It's just like, and then it makes me realize how hardcore Bugs Bunny is influenced by the Marx Brothers. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, at one point he does even impersonate Groucho,
Mm-hmm.
but Bugs's whole personality is based upon this not taking anything seriously for a moment, which the Marx Brothers never do. The Marx Brothers, that's the key to the comedy for them, is there's no seriousness about anything at any point. And in fact, the more ridiculous it is, the more serious it is, which makes it more ridiculous. You know, it's kind of brilliant in that respect, where they're just like, we will not adhere to any sort of taking anything serious. You bring anything to us, and we're just going to immediately turn it and make a joke out of it because nothing's serious.
Yeah.
Nothing. You know.
Mm-hmm. And you bringing up the watching Chico's playing with the it's you get to see that all of them have all their different talents, and that's what they would bring to the stage, obviously, right? Everybody's a musician, everybody does the comedy, everybody, you know, I bet even Zeppo had it. He just doesn't get to shine as much in the movie, but that versatility, and that's what makes it, they try to pack all that in, you know, it makes it that's so brimming with energy.
Well, I've read the old vaudeville guys. That's how you had to do. You had to be able to sing and dance. You had to be able to act. You had to play an instrument. You had to, you know, because there's no telling how you were going to be able to feed yourself doing that, right? So you, yeah. But those guys were. I mean, Chico and Harpo in particular seemed very, very good at the piano and at the harp. I mean, that was some really impressive stuff.
Yeah, I remember the first time watching these, and then getting to that first harp solo and just being kind of like, what? Like, you don't expect it to stop and be like, oh, kind of blow your mind because I'm a really good musician. It's like, are you kidding me? And then I read about that a little bit more, and I guess his unique harp playing inspired other people because nobody else had really done his strange method of, you know, the way he would pluck it and shit.
Plucking it and shit.
You know, he's going all fast, and
that's great.
Hence the name Harpo.
Yeah.
I only have a few notes, so
it's it was an interesting thing to do. It's kind of like bringing, I don't know, it's like bringing Eddie Van Halen out in the middle of a movie and just having him just bust into a solo and then going back to the movie. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, here's Eruption for 2.5 minutes and back to the, you know, like, what the fuck? Okay, I guess that was enjoyable, but weird.
1930, we'd only had sound for a little bit. Still don't really know what a movie should be, so let's try this.
What a it's like the weirdest intermission you've ever seen. It was 90 minutes, but it was a fast 90 minutes. That was a fast 90 minutes. It especially once you get into the, like, after the midway point, you look up and suddenly there's 10 minutes of the movie left. It's almost over. You know, I could have honestly done without some of the musical numbers, but it was fine.
Yeah, well, I think almost everybody feels that way universally. You know,
yeah,
we realize they're there because it is what it is, but it's not why anybody's putting it on necessarily.
Yeah, my favorite bit is close to the end where Groucho looks at the screen and says, "All the jokes can't be good. You got to expect that." And then he just goes back to what he's doing. I was just
am I watching the Tonight Show? Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. So good.
And you get the luxury of seeing the nice HD versions now. And with this movie in 1936, I think it was, or 39, the Hays Code made them cut a few seconds out for a reissue. And so that edited version was all that was out until a few years ago. An unedited copy was found in the British Film Institute, which is what they made the new Blu-ray set from. and it's
Good.
with some mild innuendo that I can't even remember what it was.
Mhm.
One of the songs where you'd be like, "What? Why would
Yeah.
somebody care about that?" While meanwhile, he's saying things like, "Somewhere my love lies sleeping with the male chorus." That doesn't get edited out. It went right over their head. You know? Nobody
Sorry, I
talked
didn't
that
mean to
long.
laugh so loud, but that's great. They're a very cheeky bunch, you know. They're and that's the great thing about in general about comedy is when it pushes the boundaries a bit and kind of makes room for other things, and pokes in at this, but at the same time, because sometimes, in my opinion, when the longer you poke fun at something, the more comfortable it becomes. The more easy it is to deal with. In a certain, I don't know, in a certain way. I mean, you don't want to be cruel about it, but at the same time, joking about something sometimes brings it to the forefront and starts conversations that you wouldn't always have, or just kind of puts it into the whole zeitgeist.
Yeah.
Now suddenly it's in the background there. There you go. Anyway, I like that.
Yeah. And so back in 1974, 50 years ago at the time of this recording, this was
Yes.
still one of the lost films of the Marx Brothers because it was held up in litigation. Basically, not so much litigation, but like a rights ownership or something. And then since they were getting more popular again, they were getting a resurgence. You can probably tell the story a little better about the college student who basically championed getting this movie a reissue, and then this movie came out in theaters again in '74 and played alongside all the new movies back then.
Yeah, and I
Long
think
story short,
that he was doing that at his college, wasn't he? He was trying to get a revival or a screening
yeah, I
going.
think so.
Because Groucho showed up to something like that and met him.
Yeah, he ended up working with him after that.
Yeah, he ended up working with him. He was kind of not single-handedly, but he was one of the people that really brought the Marx Brothers back to the forefront and back to a new audience. I mean, this is 40 years later. These films have kind of been forgotten. This is before VHS and before you could have media forever. You could keep media, have it of your own, and play it at your own home. I mean, you either went to the movies or you watched TV, and that was it. There were no recordings of anything and if they were owned by the people who were showing them to you. Period.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, the world after the VCR is a completely different world for media.
Yeah. And so in 1974, when this got reissued, there was lines around the block of people waiting to get into this, 40-year-old movie alongside, whatever else was playing at the time, Exorcist or whatnot.
Yeah, because nobody had seen it for 40 years. Maybe it's and probably because it was, like you said, tied up in litigation, it's not being shown on TV.
Yeah.
Because again, when I was a kid in like the late 70s, these things were on the local UHF stations.
The resurgence had happened.
The resurgence had hit.
Yeah.
It's like the Three Stooges.
It's interesting to think about it in that context. Yeah.
There used to be a place in Oklahoma City when I was a kid called Crystal's Pizza Palace. And for those of you who are from Oklahoma City and are listening, you know exactly the place I'm talking about. Everybody does. And basically it was the place that you went to have your birthday party. It had a second level with skee ball and an arcade. And on the bottom level was a giant pizza buffet. And it had a pool table room, but it also had a movie room. And so when you had your birthday there, basically you could eat all the pizza. You and all your friends could eat all the pizza you want. You get it. You just run up to the pizza buffet and grab some, and you'd run into the movie room and you would watch the Three Stooges or you would watch the Marx Brothers. And I remember as a kid having my birthday there, and it was like one of the best days of my life. It was fantastic. We got to play pool, we got to have pizza, and we watched the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers. It was great.
Yeah,
played some skee ball.
When I was a little kid in Virginia, and we only had like the 2 or 3 channels that would come in the late 70s, I don't remember any Marx Brothers being on, but there was always Three Stooges or Laurel and Hardy or Little Rascals or
Little Rascals.
Panther cartoon would be on a lot, but those were the old ones that I remember being inundated with a lot. I got the Marx Brothers. I got saved for me for years later, and then what? One of the things that sparked my interest of going back to them and finally, other than wanting to fill in gaps in film history, was
Yes, sir.
all the MST3K, and I know they made all these Marx Brothers references, and I wanted to understand what the references were. So as I started going through these movies again, it was like one after the other of these iconic scenes where, oh God,
Yeah.
like that 3 hard-boiled eggs. Now I know what they're talking about. And it makes the riff funnier, makes the movie funnier, and then I just grew to appreciate these movies more and more, especially like the first 7. I like all 12 of them, but the first 7 are the ones that I think are the best ones. And I think me and just about everybody else does too. It's not like I have a unique opinion on that, but I would just watch. I figured I was going to watch it once, and then over the years, I find myself every 6 months or so putting
Coming back
on
to it.
this or Duck Soup or Day at the Races because
Day
they're
at the
so
Races.
everlasting,
Yeah, Day at the Races and Night at the Opera are 2 of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
And Duck Soup's pretty damn good too. But this is a good. I don't know. Like if you were going to watch our movies, this is like handing you Writing Frenzy.
Yeah.
And like here's the beginning of what
Here's
we
the
did as a
beginning.
trilogy.
Not
Enjoy
giving
it.
you comic book diaries. That's
Not giving you comic book
things,
diaries. That's coconuts. But
yeah.
this is Writing Frenzy. It's a full movie and it sets up the whole trilogy that you're about to watch. And I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Not trying to
Coconuts
tie it back and talk about us all the time, but whatever.
Yeah. There's a lot more singing in Coconuts. There's still some really good gags in that one too, but
Sure.
everything's a lot more stagey. Maybe one day we'll loop all the way back around to that. But I figured if we were going to dip in Animal Crackers, I figured was a good place to start. I didn't want to start at like one of the later ones that's considered one of the better, because then where do you go from there? Downhill. So I figured let's start here. I have just a few notes.
Sounds like I'm going to be watching more Marx Brothers movies at some point.
Eventually, it'll be a bit, I think, though, because we have so much other giant world
a lot
of
of
film to
stuff
go
to cover,
to
yeah.
that I think it'd be some time. But there's a few others that I wouldn't mind discussing at some point. I only watched the first half of it this time on my rewatch. I've seen it so many times that it's like, oh yeah, I remember all the way up to Harpo comes in, sprays everybody, knocks everybody out, and then proceeds to knock himself out.
Yeah, and produce another HR nightmare by laying across the chest of some passed out woman.
So
Harpo, we're gonna have to let you go, buddy. Harpo, look, I said no. You can honk the horn all you want. I don't want your fish, Harpo. You're gonna have to go. Yes, you play a beautiful harp, Harpo, but you have to stop smacking women on the ass and running away laughing. Okay. And in fact, the last time you did it to the CEO's wife, we're just gonna have to let you go. I'm sorry. Goodbye, Harpo.
And also, people talk about Chico being like, "You're not Italian," and that's like
I thought Chico was Hispanic. I thought that was Latin in some way.
And then there's a line where somebody says, well, the guy says to him, "When did you get to be Italian?" Right? Like, because it's like implying that this is not a shtick, but a false identity. Mm-hmm. He's wearing this like a fake persona. That's why it is a shticky Italian thing, pretending to be somebody else. It's ID theft. They abuse that painting. That thing's getting rolled up, thrown around. Because you just imagine
folded over into four corners. You put a poster like that, you're never gonna. Yeah, it's terrible.
That's in the days where we'd roll the Spider-Man #1 comic book back, or I should say Action Comics #1. Roll line back on it. This one has I think AFI put this at like somewhere around number 83 of greatest dialogue of all time from a movie, or greatest joke, or something along these lines. But it was line.
It's good. It's a sharp movie.
The elephant in the pajamas line.
Yeah, the dialogue is constant. It feeds off itself. There's non sequiturs all over the place. Groucho is some of the stuff he says is rough.
Mm-hmm.
Like he talks about people's looks. He talks about his own looks. He talks about, he's just pot shotting at everybody. Not rough, like totally mean, but like, damn, There's several times where I was laughing out loud, just going, damn. And for some reason, again, Harpo to me, there were several times where he would just come on screen. And I'd start laughing just from his face or from his zany kind of antics. I really enjoy his appearances in that film.
And it was the once I shot an elephant in my pajamas, what he was doing in my pajamas. I'm not sure. I'm not saying the line right, but that's the line that the AFI singled out from the movie as
that's
one
just
of the
ridiculous.
most classic.
Oh, I thought it was I was thinking of you were saying about the being banned in the cup. I see what you're saying. AFI, yeah, great. That was a great line, actually.
American Film Institute. Yeah, that's I should have specified.
It took me a second.
So, out of 5 stars, this is going to be the first one that I give the 5 stars to, because I know it's got a little creakiness to it in parts, but overall, I mean, damn, you don't have this, you don't have a whole lot of other things, and there's parts of it that, like, for a movie that's, 86 years old, can still grab you in those parts where it's just like, damn, okay. So...
I don't think it's their best work.
No.
I liked it. It's enjoyable. Like, even when you put it, like, I remember thinking when you gave it to me, I was like, oh boy, I've seen this in a while, and maybe it's the comic's gonna be a little dated, so on. You put it on, it's really enjoyable. It picks up steam really fast. It's funny. But I think they did better work. And I think it's a little creaky in the camera work, and the audio's rough.
Yeah, that's true.
The audio's rough. Technically, it's just not, the best made film. And again, you're basically shooting a play.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say 4 stars. I think is right about where I would give it.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
I think it's a solid, funny movie. I think it's the genesis of a lot of comedy. I think, that comedy carried on for 40 or 50 years. And even now, every now and then still pops up. I think comedy sort of shifted and evolved into something else. But, there's nothing like a good gag. There's nothing like a good musical gag. There's nothing like a good back and forth piece of dialogue that just is funny.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie's got all that stuff. So, yeah, I'd say solid 4.
Yeah. And especially like you're saying, also, they didn't have anybody telling them what to do and what not to do yet. So it was very we can just kind of put it all in here and be completely crazy, almost like an indie film would be nowadays. Yeah.
The movie's all over the place. It doesn't make a lot of sense in certain respects. Like, who, so this dude, Groucho Marx is Captain Spaulding, who has come back from Africa from a safari. This dude's never been to Africa. He's never been on a safari. And we don't even address that. Okay, so that's the premise. And everybody addresses him as Captain Spaulding, and everybody, you know what I mean? It's farce. I get it. It's farcical and it's fun, and you're not supposed to take it seriously for a second. That's probably the biggest bit of, suspension of disbelief you're going to find, which is just like, look, just, get in the boat and ride it. It's great. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun movie. I enjoyed it.
Hello, I must be going. So the second movie is also very much a product of its time.
Yeah. It's 90s. It's 90s angst.
And specifically,
cranked up to 1 million.
Specifically 1997 angst? Or is it 1998?
I think it's 1998, actually.
Because you might not think this is important, listener, but it is. There's distinction between 97 and 98.
Totally.
Not much, but there is a difference.
No, you're right. You were right. 97.
97, which means I watched this in 98. Now, see, my personal nostalgia is those were not great years for me. So going back to it, it's always a little weird. And I have not seen this movie since home video, so that must have been 98. And it's one of these films that watching it again, I had this memory. It's called Grosse Pointe Blank, by the way, starring John Cusack, in case you're wondering what we're talking
Minnie Driver.
Yeah. I had memories of seeing it in a different location. The movie did not exist yet when I was in that location. So Mandela Effect has messed with my memory for this one over the years. Makes sense considering the time period. So then I realized this was one of those movies, rent it from Blockbuster when it was new. I put it on, and probably after about 20 minutes, I drifted away because I was probably playing on AOL or something that was eating my attention. I do
Right.
remember the whole movie, but kind of like
America
looking
Online,
back at
folks.
it here and there, But it's another one of those where, to me, first of all say I do like the movie, I enjoy the movie, but I have weird opinions of it coming back to it, not having seen it since then. I feel like if I had watched it every year since it came around, my nostalgia, my feelings for it might be different, but now it's a little odd when I come back to it. And it feels like it's an 80s movie masquerading as a 90s movie. It still has a lot of those 80s sensibilities to it.
I can see that. Sure.
And so I looked into it a little bit, and it seems like this was a John Cusack vehicle where it's basically like him and all of his buddies made a movie. Because I think they're all from the same theater group. And it's like, oh, okay, that made sense when I looked up the IMDb on it. And it's like, oh, okay, they're like, we got an opportunity, we're going to make our story. And one of the interesting things about how they shot it was they shot every scene 3 different ways, straight by the script, once kind of semi-improvised, and one completely balls out crazy. And then they took all 3 versions and cut them all together to make the movie.
Well, that's fascinating,
Weird
really.
tone, right?
Wow, that's very cool.
So I was listening to a Deacons a few weeks ago, and he was talking about, I think this was a Deacons, I'm not sure if it was him or one of the guests, but they were talking about tonal shifts in film, like what they like to do, what they think is the right way, and what is the right way, what is the wrong way, right? That's what the whole discussion's about.
Well, whatever's effective is the right way, in my opinion.
If you're shooting a movie and you have an action scene in that movie, some directors would suddenly treat that action scene like it's Die Hard, instead of realizing you're still in the movie that you're in.
Right.
It's still the drama or the comedy that you're making. So you see what I mean about, or like, oh, we're going to have a sex scene, so now it's suddenly a porn, or that's a
right,
or a horror thing. Now it's going to be really gross. So when you'll see movies where suddenly one scene is like, whoa, what happened? I think it's that example of somebody got so into, I'm going to do a scene, it's going to be like this from this, but forgetting the tone. And so with the mixture of the 3, with the Grosse Pointe Blank, it does make sense why sometimes everything's kind of sedate and sometimes things are a little crazy. They said they went more for the crazy more often than not. But what an interesting experiment of a movie. Once again, another movie that there's not another one quite like it.
Yeah, it's like a.
Sorry, that was a big rant there.
No, that's very interesting actually. The idea of filming it 3 different ways makes me make notes for the next time we shoot. But the idea that, I mean, the movie's about, like, to a certain extent, ennui, right? Like the idea that he's a hitman, but he's also kind of he's not happy with where he is in his life. It hasn't led him to what he thought he was going to do. He's starting to doubt the things that he thought were, people don't matter. Everybody, if I was going to kill you, then somebody else would have killed you. Something you did brought me to you.
Yeah, if I show up on your doorstep, then there's a reason. Yeah.
There's a reason, that type of thing, and that starts to not really be that and money does start to be really a reason to do what he does anymore. And so there's this ennui of like, what's my life about? Yeah,
don't judge somebody by what they, just because that's what they do for a living, that doesn't mean that's who they are. Yeah. And so it's that whole ennui about, oh, I wanted to do this and this, but I got stuck doing this. And in his case, he's a hitman.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this the first instance of a hitman gangster type character going to a psychiatrist in film or TV before The Sopranos?
I think so. I mean, it's the only one I can think of. And that, to me, that's a kind of one of the brilliant ideas about the movie is that, you'd have this guy who was killing people and he's having self-doubt and he's going to a psychiatrist to kind of figure out his own internal problems, and of course it's all, and it all ties back to high school, and you find out the way he left, right? He's supposed to go to prom, supposed to go with this girl, and doesn't even show up. Suddenly he just disappears. He freaks out and he joins the military, right?
Mm-hmm.
And from there it becomes a pawn. It becomes a pawn. They, oh well, you have certain moral ambiguity, so why don't we train you as a killer?
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting film, and the idea of, I like Dan Aykroyd's character because he brings the weirdness to a whole new level. Like he's that insanity in the movie that the movie wouldn't be the same without him.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, so it's one writer, and then a team of 3 doing the other, right? The ampersand and all that. And so I was like, oh, that's weird. I saw that before, and then I looked into. It's like, oh, it's basically like I was saying, John Cusack and I'm guessing his friends, basically. And it feels like an actor's movie. Like a bunch of actors got together and made a movie for actors by actors. It had that kind of.
Yeah, I can see what you mean by
character
that.
study. We can just delve into
I mean, $50 million budget, and it made 28 million nationwide. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's a success by anybody's numbers. I'm sure that was helped out by home video. They always were.
Joe Strummer score.
It's got a great score. It's got a great soundtrack. That's one of the things you haven't talked about yet, but I think needs to be emphasized. There's a lot of good music in that movie.
Oh yeah, there's music. Yeah. And it's also another thing where, coming back to it all this time later, some of the cues felt odd to me. Like, I'm like, why is Faith No More playing right now? When they pull in the parking lot, I was like, that just felt so strange to me. But a lot of the others feel really right where they belong.
Yeah.
Because now I see it, and it's almost like, whoa, that's so 90s. It's especially got that branded 97, 98. Just, there's Blink and You Miss It, Jenna Elfman.
Yeah. Yep. She's in it for just a second. I mean, Piven, our boy Piven's in it.
Oh, how you living, Jay Piven? Piven alert. We're back to Judgment Night now.
Mm-hmm.
And about his character.
How the hell have we done 9 Talking Pondos, and he's been in 2 of them already?
Been in 2 of the movies already.
Friggin' Piven.
And
Piven.
That's a good friend. Somebody who'll just help you instantly roll up a
just
body,
bury a body,
and throw it right in the incinerator, or never think twice about it. Nobody's coming looking for this guy, and he's right. Nobody is. That's a good friend.
Yeah, it is a good friend.
We only see the character a few times, but it's enough to give that development in there.
I mean, Marty, if you had killed an international hitman and you needed help getting rid of the body, I would help you. I'm a big friend. So. You're welcome.
We'll do it Grosse Pointe Blank style. And one of my notes was, that's about as 90s as it gets. You see, the character's name is Blank, and the movie is Grosse Pointe Blank. You get it? I also saw that they shot the movie in California. There's one crane shot actually in Grosse Pointe. It was too expensive. They wanted to, but they couldn't. I went down a little Wikipedia rabbit hole. One of those where 10 minutes into the movie, I had to hit pause and then start reading the internet about it because I was already too curious about, okay, where did this come from? How did this movie happen?
Interesting.
In a way, it's like this pseudo, to me, follow-up to Say Anything, because you have some of the same cast. And apparently there's a movie called, I think it's called War, Inc., that they kind of call a pseudo-sequel follow-up to this. More...
Really?
Because you have, the cast coming back together again. Kind of like how there's... Somebody said on a pod I was listening to, the world doesn't need a sequel to Best in Show, but it is cool when everybody gets back together and makes another movie together. So kind of like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay.
What else right here? Weird 1997 internet.
Yeah.
when she's using the computer. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's like it's the net with Sandra Bullock, and they erased my
Mhm.
identity.
Well, and the game that the kid is playing in the convenience store is Doom, and I have
Oh,
never
yeah.
seen it. I have never in my life seen an arcade Doom. You guys can tell me if
Right.
they're out there, but
Yeah.
that was a computer game only when I was in the 90s.
So what was more unbelievable
arcade.
unbelievable, that console or that those were noise canceling headphones? Because guys, we had those little foam headphones back then,
Yeah,
and he didn't hear any of that shit
No,
going
he'd
on.
hear the
back
guns
there
going
in front
off
of
or
it.
any of that shit. Yeah, no.
Which brings me back to weird tonal shift, which works for this movie. We keep bringing up these movies where it's examples of like if this happened in another movie, you'd be like, I don't know, that was weird. But this one it makes sense for, to where, especially in the last 10 minutes, it becomes a freaking John Woo movie. We're shooting with both hands and the guns, and I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
wait, what? But it's a hitman movie. But
Well,
it's
he's-
John
I mean, he-
Cusack and Dan Aykroyd. I don't buy them as hitmen, but that's the point, I think, because they're against
he's been
chaos.
yeah
They're
he's
against
he's been
violence.
killing people the whole movie off and on. So
That's
it's not
true.
like
Yeah.
it's not like it's. But yeah, they do ramp up the violence at the end. It's my favorite line in the movie was also in the trailer, which is, John, I thought you'd go the way of the loser hippie smoking pot and doing the hacky sack. He's like, no, I went the other way. Corporate sellout, hitman. Oh, he's like, oh, that's a growth industry. Good for you. And he just kind of goes back to what he's doing. The girl's dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a
See,
really good
all
line.
your things tie into my things. Debbie's dad. See, now we're back to the Halloween movies again. Mitchell Ryan from Halloween 6 is Debbie's dad. He's the
Right.
head of the Cult of Thorn in the Halloween movies.
That's
And I was like,
hilarious.
I know this guy. So here we are back again. Only 9 movies or 9 episodes into this podcast, and we've had like 4 or 5 connections to various Halloween sequels.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of Halloween movies.
That is true. Budrow or Boudreaux?
Boudreaux?
The dog that he accidentally killed.
Oh, yeah,
Set the whole
Boudreaux.
game in motion. I just
Forgot
wrote
about that.
Boudreaux.
Early Hank Azaria.
Oh yeah, interesting cast.
Mm-hmm. It's a
It's
good
all over
cast.
the place.
Yeah.
And-
Alan Arkin as the psychiatrist. I mean,
right.
you got to love some Alan Arkin, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, predating analyzed this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, way before it.
Now, what was the first movie where somebody got killed by dropping a TV on their head? Now, we see it happen in Scream. We see it happen in Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, but it happens in this movie, which is this movie's actually after both of those films, but I feel like there was other notable films where somebody gets a TV dropped on their head. So you at home, if you want to drop us a line of where that originated, that trope of
Which one is
you're
the
not
one where
getting
he
back
screams
up.
you're on? Which one's the one where he screams you're on TV when he does it?
Oh, I know Freddy Krueger smashes somebody's head into the TV in part 3. I forgot about that one. So that one goes first. Did Freddy do it first? I don't know. But when I saw Dan Aykroyd get a TV smashed on his head towards the end of this movie, yes, there will be spoilers. It reminded me of that.
Yeah, I'm interested. I'm not sure. God, I have that line echoing my head, and I can't figure out from where I've heard it from. Maybe it's from the movie we were just talking about. Huh.
I feel like I had a few others, but I didn't write that stuff down, unfortunately.
Well, you got to take better notes, man. Come on.
Yeah,
people
that
are
was a
listening.
note that
People
happened.
are listening, Marty.
See, I take notes while I'm watching the movie, but if something happens a few days later, or in the case of this one, it's been a little while since I've watched the movie, I had more time to think about it.
Well, this is like you said, it's really good cast. This is the same year, I guess, that Minnie Driver did Good Will Hunting.
Oh,
So she was,
when she was getting real popular right there.
yeah, she was super on fire at this point. So, and I thought she was really good in the movie. It's one of the rare movies where you see John act against his sister, Joan, even though
True.
I don't think they're ever on screen at the same time.
Yeah, like Say Anything. And then Piven's
Yeah.
in Say Anything too, so it's just
Is
weird.
he? Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Wow.
But yeah, they're not in too many movies together. Yeah.
Mm-mm. Yeah, Michael Cudlitz. Yeah, as the guy with the beamer and the coke. You want to do some coke? No, I do not. Thank you. It was the poetry. So so for me that movie, which is why I gave it to you. For me that's one that it's a repeatable movie. I can watch that one, every 6 to 9 months and enjoy it. If it pops on the cable, it's something I can watch and not. I mean, look, is it going to be the best thing I've ever seen? No, but at the same time, it's a lot of fun to watch. For me, that's a solid 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed that movie. Maybe 3.5. Yeah, I think one of Cusack's better movies, one of his weirder, funnier movies.
Yeah, I could see replay value eventually enjoying it more and more. I think I was away from it for so long, and then I remembered why I kind of drifted away from it in the first place. So it's 2.5 for me. It's nice, but for me personally, things from 97 to 98, it's got to be fucking amazing to crack the shell of the nasty nostalgia I have for the time period. So unfortunately, eventually over time, I could see myself seeing this movie enough to where it would rise to maybe a 3 or maybe above. But I would have to watch it maybe 20 more times to really kind of wring it out from its origins in my brain of, it's better than Reality Bites.
Well, and that's why I think it's a solid 3.5. It's for me. I'm on the other side of that. I don't have a problem. I try not to look at any movie in its time period. I feel like people who, there's a whole trend with people who have problems with the movie. Like Harpo being the HR nightmare. He's a sexist pig. He's not.
I'm
really.
just going more off of where I was at the time.
Yeah,
why,
right. And I hear that. I hear you with that too. I don't. Yeah,
Not
there's
the
a few from
movie's
that.
fault, no.
There's a few periods where I'm like, oh yeah, I don't.
It's like, don't remind me of that era. It's not the movie's fault. I'm just not ready to jump back in.
Yeah, for me, I think 3.5. So 2.5 for you.
The more, 2.5. But the more I think about it, it's the more I like about it as a premise. So probably the next time I go back to it, I might like it more. It might be one of those movies like, like the first time you watch Big Lebowski, it's kind of like, well, what's going on? But then the more you watch it, the more it's like,
the more you
now
watch
I'm
it,
discovering the ins and outs, and the jokes are more solid.
That's a very good
now.
point. I'm very much like that with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I had to watch that movie about 5 times to really. And for me, it's one of my favorite Tarantino movies. We'll get to that eventually, but
that's a lot of viewing.
Yeah, that's
long
a lot
movie
of viewing.
5 times.
Yeah. I kept, and mainly I did it because I kept going. What? I feel like I'm missing something. Like I feel like there's something in the back of my head that says, "You're missing it. Just watch it again." And it finally clicked. And for me, I think it's, again, we'll talk about it later, but I think it's his best work and some of the actors' best work. Anyway, what do you got for me next week?
Okay, so let me see here. Did I? And so I think you're supposed to tell me first this time.
Oh, I'm supposed to tell you. Okay,
well,
so
if we go back, and I'm sure I probably lost track of who goes, but it just feels like it's supposed to be you.
No problem. So I haven't done many 70s movies yet, and I think we should. It was a prime time for film. It was really a weird time for studios. They got a lot of weird shit made, and so I'm going to go with. And this one popped up, and I haven't seen it in a long time. So I'm going to be watching it along with you at a very kind of like Grosse Pointe Blank, where it's been a long time since I've seen it. In fact, I think the last time I saw this movie was on USA's Night Flight in the mid 80s.
So Grosse Pointe Blank didn't even exist yet.
So this movie is called A Boy and His Dog, starring Don Johnson. Yes. Again, I haven't seen it in a long time. All I really remember about it is that it's post-apocalyptic. He runs into some sort of weird female cult, and I don't even remember how the movie ends. So
I don't either, actually.
I'm very interested to watch it. So
I haven't.
That'll be your movie next week.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in at least 20 years. At least I might have seen it on IFC in the late 90s, around or early aughts was the last time, but I saw this on the movie channel in the mid 80s, late 80s.
It's been 30 years for me easily since I've seen this movie. Interesting,
because that movie was set 50 years in the future, and that
and it was in 74.
Yeah.
Well, that seemed timely.
Yeah,
our listeners, very timely.
2024. My movie is not timely, but I feel like this could have been a good double feature if you had gone to the drive-in in 1981, and Boy and His Dog might have been showing as the second feature to this. It's from the director of Psycho 2, Richard Franklin. This is the movie he did right before that got him that job. I think he's an Australian filmmaker. At least I know the movie's Australian. It's Road Games, starring Stacy Keach and Jamie Lee Curtis. This is when she was still making horror movies after Halloween, but this is the one that's not really the slasher one. Well, I guess The Fog isn't either. It's more of this, not quite
it's a trucker movie.
Movie.
It's one of those late 70s convoy, BJ and the Bear, fucking hitchhiker, hitcher, trucker
inspired
movies.
By Convoy and the like. Anyway, it was ubiquitous with cable in the 80s for a while there, then disappeared.
What was the one that Spielberg did? Was it Duel?
Duel, yeah.
Duel, yeah. Okay, cool. All right, Road Games it is. Interesting. Well, this is going to be, I think Joe Bob would be proud of us. It'd be an interesting double feature for the drive-in, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that's going to be, okay. Boy and His Dog and Road Games. Why not?
Why not?
Let's do it.
Keeping it weird.
Listeners, if you're following along, I hope you're watching these films, and I hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
All right, Marty. I guess that's it till next week.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
All right. We'll talk to you then.
Cool.
Later.
Thanks. Support the show on Buzzsprout for only $3 a month. Give us a 5-star review on Spotify or the platform of your choice. And be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube page.